This is Heaven Gate, Act 1, from 2009. In 2003, a boy named Neil Yeager opened the gate to hell, resulting in demons being spread across the land. For the next 6 years, Neil traveled around slaying demons with the demon-slaying Yeager sword that he had pulled from the gate. Finally, in 2009, Neil was able to slay the last of the demons and seal the Hell Gate. Life on Earth returned to normal. But now, 5 years later, Earth will face a bigger threat, one that could endanger all of existence. December 2014. Mars Northern Ice Cap. This place gives me the creeps. What's the matter, Keith? Afraid of Martians? Would you two pay attention and look for a good drill site? Wonder what Martian water tastes like. Huh? Ooh, shiny wall. Gah! Where's Keith? He was right behind me. Keith! Keith! What happened? I'm sorry. I was just startled. I'm fine. But you're not going to believe this. No way. Get a message out to NASA. We found something big. Heaven Gate. Hellgate the movie. Act 1. May 2015. The Groom Lake Facility, Nevada. Area 51. Nightfall. Zip. What happened to your face? Oh, my electric shaver broke, so the wife bought me a razor, said it was cheaper. But I don't know how to use the dang thing. Got her specimen on the table. Oops. Gotta turn that down a bit. Got the pliers. Grabbing a sample. Take the sample over to the microscope. Something snaking its way out. Into under the bandaging. Oh! Hopping on over and turning up the thermostat. Dr. Harrison, open up! You were supposed to be out of there 3 hours ago. Still no reply. He unlocked the door. Creak. Dr. Harrison, what the hell? Why is your helmet off? Something's wrong with him. Dr. Harrison, hands up! Rushes in and bang, bang, bang. Oh. What the hell? What's going on in there? Bam! Dr. Harrison? Sergeant Atkinson? Sergeant Shoemaker? Boom. Time to have some fun. Kaboof! Move, 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 move! Just cutting through them like butter. Fire! Kill! Oh, shots. Oh, man. A lot of sound effects. Feels stupid. More rushing in. Oh, surrounded. Start spinning. Boom. Ah, the joys of my red Gusnado. The tank comes in. What's this toy? Smash. Kaboom. Flying out of the smoke. Come on, come on, come on, come on. Next. What is he? 500 years ago, the prophet Michel de Nostradamus predicted that there would be 3 antichrists. Pei, Ne, Laurent will create more fire and blood. Bathed in praise, a great escape is assured. Those worried will refuse him entry, but doubtful that for long they can hold him confined. Napoleon Bonaparte. Beasts ferocious with hunger will cross the rivers. The greater part of the battlefield will be against Hister. Into the cage of iron will the great one be drawn, when the child of Germany observes nothing. Adolf Hitler. Maebus will soon die, and then will come a horrible undoing of people and animals. At once one will see vengeance. 100 powers, thirst, famine, when the comet will pass. Draco Maebus. How may we serve you, Lord Maebus? Act 1. End. Fan art! Thank you to Kayla Howard for making these beautiful fan art pictures. Feel free to submit your own fan art. Act 2. Next time on Heaven Gate, Act 2. Now that Earth faces a new threat, it's time to see how time has changed the life of the Demon Slayer, Neil Yeager. Credits: art and story, Nathaniel Yeager. Weapon consultant, Patrick Leroy. Military consultant, Amy Williams. For daily updates on the progress of the next issue, follow Yeager Inc. on Twitter. Twitter.com/Yeager_Inc. I don't think that's accurate anymore. You find my link, my Twitter down below. It's different now. All right. A lot to talk about. It's the first issue of Heaven Gate. So let's talk about in between Hellgate and Heaven Gate. So, I finished the last issue of Hellgate probably at the very end of 2008, but it came out in January of 2009. In that year, because this came out at the end of 2009, so there was like most of the year, I made something called Hellgate Report, which was like a book. It used to be on the first version of my website. It's not there anymore. I need to find a way to get that available because it's interesting. It was essentially I knew I was going to make Heaven Gate. I wanted to write Heaven Gate in a way that you didn't need to read Hellgate, but in case you were curious and didn't want to sit through 42 issues of chicken scratches, Hellgate Report was a way you could just kind of get caught up. It had the entire plot synopsis for the entire series. It had character bios, along with photos of some of the people the characters are based off of with their permission. It also had a bunch of extra goodies. It had a script for a Hellgate movie that never got made. It would have been terrible. It would have been a bunch of stupid teenagers with a camcorder. And we probably would have cut someone's hand off because I had a real sword. I still do. It's over there. Anyway, there was also just a lot of extra art and all kinds of stuff. So that was Hellgate Report, and I spent most of 2009 on that. Really amazing that I got that like done within the year, considering how long Heaven Gate issues can take me these days. But then I immediately got to work on Heaven Gate. So let's talk about where Heaven Gate came from. So it started with that friend who said, I want to make a Hellgate movie. And I wrote that script, the one that's in Hellgate Report that never got made. I made it with our constraints in mind as a bunch of kids in high school. It was a pretty blasé story about there's a town that Neil and his friends come across. This would have been while Neil was with Kelly, during that brief moment between when he met Kelly and before Kelly betrayed him near the end of the Red Flame issues. That's when it was going to take place. And basically they were going to come across a town that had been wiped out by demons, and then Neil would fight the demons. It just wasn't a good plot. It was pretty fucking basic. It was just, but at first my friend liked it, but then he's like, no, try again, and this time, like, don't worry about constraints. We'll make it work. And it never came to pass. I never even made a script for it, but it did start getting the gears turning in my head. What if I did make Hellgate the movie without any constraints? The first thing I had to think of is I wanted it to be a threat that was beyond what Neil had faced before. I needed someone stronger than the Demon King. And I had to think of a reason, like, well, where is he now? Where has he been? What's going on? And I had several ideas. But eventually I landed on this Mars idea. And I won't go too more into that. I don't want to get into spoiler territory. I will say that originally Mabus has designed, like, it always had this big coat concept. And he was also going to use chains. But then I made issue 34 of Hellgate, and I gave that demon chains, and those chains were a fucking bitch to draw. And so I was like, no chains. I don't want a whole sequel series where the main characters or the main villains using chains all the time. So that got scrapped. But eventually I landed on this half scaly boy idea. And I know Heavengate was tossing around in my mind pretty early into Hellgate, because if you go back to issue 21 of Hellgate, which was 2007, there are hints in that issue. I won't go over them in too much detail now. We'll probably talk more when we get to an issue that they relate to. But there were hints there that show me that I had Heavengate in mind because of some dialogue that's in issue 21 that I was going to put into Hellgate the movie. Let's talk about that. Hellgate the movie. What does that mean? It's a fucking comic book, my guy. What are you doing? They are literally not moving. It is not a movie by definition. So my plan was, it really was going to be Hellgate the movie, and not live action like the first movie script, but it was going to be animated. At the time, I was really into Newgrounds, and there were a lot of, for the first time, there was a lot of amateur animators popping up, thanks to programs like Flash. And they were putting their work out on Newgrounds. And I was like, I could do that. And so I had this intention, because again, like, I thought of this really early in Hellgate. I'm like, by the time I'm done with Hellgate, I will have taught myself Flash, and I will make the best animation ever. Because my only perception was that, like, when I saw jank in these early Flash animations, I just thought of it as, well, they didn't take their time. Now, fast forward, Hellgate's done, and I still have not learned Flash. I did download it and maybe screwed around with it for like one night and got frustrated and then never went back. And I'm so glad I didn't go the animation route, because if you think comics take a while, my guy, holy crap. We'd still be on like issue fucking 4 of Heavengate if it was animated. So I was like, all right, I'll make it a comic. But I still wanted to have a bit more prestige than Hellgate. And so what I did is I was like, all right, full color. Full color. Now, digital full color was not an option, because digital full color took me forever back then, because I was off Microsoft Paint at this point. We'll talk about that in a second with this cover. But I was still using a mouse. I was still drawing by hand and coloring with a mouse. So Photoshop did not speed that up too much. So full color was not an option digitally. So I went with how I did full color in my spare time, which was color pencil. Color pencil was my go-to. It was the easiest for me to use. Color pencil is very good medium for nice, soft blended colors. And I, despite having a lot of experience with colored pencils, never learned to do that. Because I never really had a soft blended eye for my art, my art was very much based in animation, in anime, flat colors that are necessary in animation. And so that's how I color with colored pencils, which it just doesn't look good. I would get better over the course of Heaven with my colored pencil technique, but it never really fully took advantage of the medium. So, but that was my coloring option at the time. So yeah, Hellgate the movie, it's going to be in full color. So let's talk about this cover. This will be a long one. Let's talk about this cover. We have now fully abandoned Microsoft Paint. Microsoft Paint was left behind with Hellgate. I am now fully working with Photoshop. I have taken classes in college. I understand layers. And this is the first product of that. For one, let's talk about the iconography around it. So I retained the whole big logo, middle at the bottom, title up in the upper corner. I decided to go with just act and numbers instead of coming up with a name for every issue because it's a movie plot, right? It's not episodic like the first series. So it's just act 1, act 2, act 3. Although not really in the strictest definition of that. But instead of the flames of Hellgate, I went with a cloudy glow of like heaven. And this like stone, this marble. You can still see in Hellgate the movie the official Hellgate font, Cooper Plate Gothic Bold. For Heaven Gate, I had to come up with a new font for that, or find a new font for that, and I went with Goody Hand Tooled. And I like it because it kind of has this built-in shine effect to it, which doesn't look the best here. It will look better later. So for this first cover, we have Maebus frozen in the ice, and I took full effect of layers. You'll notice that his coat on his chest is lighter than his coat on his arm, and that's because it is farther away from your viewpoint. There is more ice between you and that point. And so I used layers and these like light blue filters in between each segment of him to convey that. So closest to you is his left arm, and then his right arm, and then his body. And so there's multiple layers so that to convey that. And I tried to put like a little frost around the outside. I remember showing this to people because I was really proud of it, and I wanted to know what people thought of it and if they could tell what was going on. And a lot of people thought he was like falling through the sky. I'm like, son of a bitch. But no, he's supposed to be frozen in ice here. And yeah, I think that's enough about that cover for once. And then we have our quick. First, we have blank on the left because that's where eventually we'll get our recaps, but there's nothing to recap, except for all of Hellgate, which I tried to recap in one page. I think I did a pretty good job. I don't care for, and I would do this for a few issues where, so with Hellgate, which was all grayscale, I would show flashbacks by doing black borders around those frames, which worked. And it's based off, a lot of shonen manga does that as well. And that's where I got the idea, is the pages of Shonen Jump. But for the full colored Heaven Gate, I was like, oh, I'll just grayscale anything that's a flashback. Now that I have color as an option. And I don't dislike that at all. My problem is, what I did here is I fully colored it and then grayscaled it in Photoshop. And it looks terrible. And I should have known better, because one of my, like, manga, right? Manga will sometimes, got an example right here. When they make it into the magazine, right? Sometimes, for whatever reason, certain chapters would be allotted a couple pages of color. I don't know how that got decided, or you know, it's probably just something to do with the the editor or something. But when they would get condensed, all the chapters would be combined down into the volumes. Those color pages would be grayscaled out, and that's most likely just to save on printing costs. And you can always tell those pages that have been grayscaled opposed to the pages that were just ink in the first place, because they look washed out and terrible, like they look muddy and gross. So, and I've always thought that, so I don't know why I decided to go that route myself. But eventually I would change my mind and I just would not put color on those flashbacks. So, but yeah, we got Neil pulling out the Hellgate, the demons coming out, Neil slaying a few random demons, Neil facing down the demon god, the rusty sword, and then we jump right in. I don't dislike Mars, but yeah, look at space. Look at space around Mars. You can see my pencil strokes, and it's ugly as hell. So we start with Mars. Let's talk about the time period. Okay. 2014, or more likely the rest of the series 2015. So I knew that Heaven Gate would be a near future series. It would be set a few years after Hellgate, right? Hellgate took place in current time with when I made it, right? Each issue of Hellgate took place on the day the issue came out, you know. So Hellgate takes place between the years 2003 and 2009. Heaven Gate, being a more movie-centric plot, where most of its events are going to happen within the span of a couple weeks, I couldn't do that with. Plus, I wanted to jump ahead. I wanted to age my characters up. And I thought about how old I wanted my characters to be. I thought about like where I want them to be at their lives. I want them mostly to be out of school. A lot of them still had a lot of school to make up for because they had been traveling around slaying demons. But I didn't want them to be too old. I was like, I don't want to be in his 30s. Gross. I say now at 35. And so I settled on spring of 2015. That's when I wanted Heaven Gate to take place, right? And then, okay, so at that point, that's the future for me. I say here in the year 2023. 2015 at the time was the future, because I was making this in 2009, right? And so I settled on 2015, and then I looked at how long it would take to travel to Mars, or more importantly, how long it would take to travel back from Mars, right? And it was like 8 months, I think, or something like that. I don't know. But anyway, I decided, all right, well, if I want this first scene on Mars, then I need to set it a few months earlier than the rest of the series. And I landed on December of 2014. So, yeah, I remember that was kind of cool. I was like, wow, 2014. Can you imagine what that year is going to be like? And now here we are. I also like that I don't think I believed this for a second, but I just like the idea that manned mission to Mars as soon as 2014. I'm used. And so I got these 3 randos that I designed, and they're just looking for a drill site until one of them finds Mavis in the ice. Heaven Gate, unlike Hellgate, would have title pages, much like manga. Probably not necessary, considering how Heaven Gate is a single chapter release, opposed to manga, which is a collection in magazines originally. So like a title page is almost like it's necessary because they don't have their own cover. They're just a cover for the whole magazine. But it's a fun idea. I like what I do with most of it. Here we get a glimpse of like Mavis back whenever on Mars. And now we jump forward to May 2015. That's how long it would take to get this sample back from Mars. I do like these vehicles here. I had a very cinematic eye immediately with Heaven Gate. You know, these establishing shots. Here we see there's something in this semi that's probably important. This car is escorting it, stuff like that. The Groom Lake facility, that's the official name for Area 51. And we got this guy, and I set up this whole bit, like he's got this cut on his cheek. And then when he goes to drill into the ice, it's a little bit he has it on a little bit too high, and it causes a shard of ice to cut into his hazmat suit, unbeknownst to him. I will say, you can see a close-up of Maebus' scales here. These are fish-style scales, and I meant for him to have dragon-style scales. Reptile-style scales. But I didn't really know the difference at the time. I would later learn that and would change his design. But we can see there's some sort of demonic aura that can now get out of this hole in the ice, go into this hole in his hazmat suit, and seep into the wound under his bandage, and he immediately has a change. His eyes turn yellow. There's a little bit of red around the eyes as well, and these markings along the jawline. Then we got some guys checking on him. Also, I do like just the idea that, like, oh, we found an alien. All right, let's stick one guy in a small room with it just on a fucking table. Also, CRT monitor. Love that too. This does not look like state of the art. It's just, I don't know. This was like fucking a high school science lab. The guns that they're wielding are P90s. These are real world guns. I went with P90 because I like the look of them, and that's because I'm a big fan of Stargate. Stargate SG-1, Stargate Atlantis. A few seasons of Stargate SG-1, they switched from, which is a show about military Air Force personnel traveling to other worlds via a portal. They used AK-47s at first in the show, and then they switched to the P90, and I can't remember why. I think they just kind of had a bit of a cooler look to them, or maybe they were just easier props on set. So I drew P90s because I just love Stargate so much. I'm like, everyone gets P90s. The future, everyone gets a P90. And once Harrison here is shot, his appearance changes again. His skin becomes very pale. His eyes are completely red now, and the markings completely cover his face. Then our first look at a revived Maebus. I've definitely tweaked his face quite a bit over the years. His coat's pretty much the same though. As we can see, we'll get a lot of reoccurring. We'll get reminded this a lot over the course of the issue, is that it seems that he can channel his demonic aura into dead people, or even just people with an open wound in Harrison's case, and they now work for him. This issue was actually a bit shorter when I first thought it up. But there is, I was in college at the time. I remember listening to a song on the drive home from class, and it was Super Majin Buu's theme from Dragon Ball Z, the Bruce Faulkner score from the English dub. And that is like Maebus' unofficial theme. And the more I listened to that song, the more different scenarios I thought up for this rampage. So I just kept inserting pages into the script. And it's quite the gruesome opening to Heaven Gate. I actually remember having a few readers who were used to Hellgate just suddenly see just like this slaughter issue, being like, is this what this is going to be like? I was like, it's just a setup. It's just a setup for the bad guy. Don't worry. We see Maebus here hiding. And I really like, there's a lot of through lines with these characters. Like here you can see these two guys in the hazmat suits, right? They're the ones from earlier in the issue. You can see it appears the way they died was being slit in the throat because Dr. Harrison had that scalpel. These other people are, getting shot up. Then he gets surrounded and he starts spinning around, and we get this big red demonic tornado, or gustnado, which is an actual weather phenomenon. I had someone laugh at that once, like, gustnado. I'm like, it's real. This tank definitely looks like I drew it from memory. Good job, me. Couldn't do a quick Google search, I guess. We just drew a tank from memory. Looks amazing. No notes. 10 out of 10. Here's where my weapons consultant came in, because I didn't know how to load a P90. I had no idea. I was like, I don't know, where's the... I wanted someone like trying to quickly reload a cartridge or a magazine. And so that's where I had my friend, Patrick Leroy, meet me at college. Like we both went to the same college. And I was like, hey, can you meet me between classes at this one table? And I basically just had a printout because I was actually working on Heaven Gate in between classes. Like I would just like pack it all up into a folder and like work on it. And so like I had a printout of a picture of a P90 for reference for when I was drawing at school, because this was pre when I had smartphones, so I couldn't just immediately look up a picture at any time. I was like, how's this load? And he's like, oh, that goes like that. I'm like, okay, thank you. And I put him down as my weapons consultant. And here we get another reminder that, again, this is what's happening. You die, you get infected, you are now a slave. And then this is actually where the name Mabus came from. I remember the History Channel, they probably still do, I don't know, used to air a ton of Nostradamus specials. Oh my God, he predicted all these things that you can't actually use to predict future events. You can only wait till they happen and then try to squint and see a connection between what he said and what just happened. But there was this big thing about how you could how he predicted 3 antichrists, and people are like, well, we think the first one's Napoleon and we think the second one's Hitler, and the third one, ooh, who is this Mabus? Like, that's the one that we were all supposed to look out for because he's a coming. There could be a Mabus. I remember like you can tell what era this special came out on, because like this the theory that the special put out was that Mabus was Osama Bush, the last 2 letters of Osama, Ma, and the first 3 letters of Bush. So like Osama bin Laden and George W. Bush. That was what people's current theory was, is that the third Antichrist is the coming together of Osama bin Laden and George W. Bush. Like that the conflict that these two are going through on the world stage after 9/11, that is what Nostradamus was predicting for the third Antichrist. It's dumb as shit. Anyway, I was like, but I'm going to use that name. I'm going to call my main villain Mabus. I'm going to say he's the Antichrist. And spoiler alert, I don't do anything with this going forward. There's no like, Nostradamus did predict this. No one ever brings up Nostradamus again. I still think it's kind of cool. It was fun. It was weird to sit there and draw Napoleon and Hitler one day. But I did do that. I will definitely get better at drawing laughing Mabus in the future. Also, you can see like this text effect, man. This is just me going fucking ham in Photoshop with the bevel. And then we fade out to this just burning fort. And then Kayla was a friend of mine from Gaia Online, one of the longest readers of the Hellgate series. She also was the basis for the demon in issue 18, A Peaceful Day in the Life of Lucas, because she won a fan art contest. She drew me these 2 things here. I find this funny because the heights are all fucking wrong here. I mean, these are great. I love her art style. But like, Courtney is supposed to be really close to Neil's height. Here she's very short. Jessica's tall. Should not be that tall. Jesse should not be anywhere near Neil's height. But then we got Hippo with some panties. But I do still love this. And then this Demon Princess drawing, we saw Demon Princess briefly in Hellgate. I knew that I wanted to bring her back and that I needed to redesign her. And so I actually got a couple friends to like take a crack at her, and Kayla was the first of the 2. And this was her redesign of the Demon Princess. So, and then instead of, so we're not doing what we did with Hellgate, right? With Hellgate, the issue review and issue preview at the front and the back of the issue, I would just use the other covers, right? The cover from the last issue and the cover for the next issue. I decided not to go that route this time. And instead I came up with this one. I had an area for credits. So I could credit people who helped me out. And then also I thought, I'm like, what if I just have like a silhouette that represents what the next issue is going to be about? So we get Neil right there, and we get a preview of what Neil's new design is going to be. And I remember when Kayla saw this, she's like, "Oh my god, I gotta draw it, Neil! Like that looks so cool. I want to draw it right now." And that's all she freaking saw. So, and I think we talked about this at the end of Hellgate. I will say, and this is more about the website than the actual issue because this came up later, but because we will see this change a lot more. So on the left, you have my instructions page, which is meant to like help people out regardless of how they're viewing it. If you're on desktop or laptop, you're going to want to use the keys. And then on a smartphone or tablet, you can swipe. This is especially helpful because when you when you do view this on a tablet or a smartphone, you only see the page on the left first. You see them one page at a time, opposed to on desktop where you see 2 pages at a time. And so if I just left this blank, because technically the issue hasn't started yet, you just think it hadn't loaded yet. So, and I decided, I'd draw Hippo, but I was like, what do I draw? Why don't I try to make Hippo look like I made him in the same medium of the issue he's appearing in front of? So for Hellgate, there was only 2 versions of Hippo. The first few issues had a version of Hippo where I tried to mimic him drawn with a normal number 2 pencil. And then the second version was Hippo drawn with mechanical pencil, which was the majority of Hellgate. But now we're in Heavengate. Now things are in color. So this is actually still digital art, actually. This is not drawn by hand. This is still digital art. I just mimicked the process. I used the pencil tool and I sketched it, and then I kind of erased it, but not fully and then I used an ink, and then I used a color pencil tool to make it look like it was ink and color pencil, just like if I had drawn Hippo in this very issue. And that will update as Heavengate's art style updates, or Heavengate's, I guess, medium updates. So, but with that, I think I've said everything I want to say about this first issue of Heavengate. This is probably the longest reading ever. I think we've beaten the final issue of Hellgate, which was the longest reading of that series. So that was Heavengate Act 1. Thank you for that, Redeem Gamer Boy. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, make sure you hit the like button, and I'd love to read your comments below. And make sure you're subscribed so you know when the next comic goes up. Also, check the description for a playlist of any readings you may have already missed. And if you'd like to read ahead, all of these comics are free on my website, YagerComics.com. Bye!